The United States and Turkey are working on together, including the efforts to grow and expand NATO. We're very pleased that the ratification protocols were signed by President Erdogan and are now before the Turkish parliament. We talked about the important work that we're doing in support of Ukraine. Turkey has played a critical role over the last couple of years, particularly with the Black Sea Grain Initiative and trying to get food out of Ukraine, as well as supporting its electricity grid. We discussed our work to strengthen our counterterrorism partnership, to work as well at growing our economic relationship through trade and investment. And of course, we discussed the crisis in Gaza, and including the efforts to significantly expand humanitarian assistance to people in need, efforts to prevent the conflict from spreading to other parts of the region, and what we can do to set the conditions for a durable, sustainable, lasting peace for Israelis and Palestinians. On the humanitarian piece, I think we've made some good progress in recent days in working to expand that. Ambassador Satterfield remains in the region working that every single day. We've also had very important conversations throughout this trip with countries in the region on the role that everyone can play in making sure that the conflict doesn't expand, doesn't spread to other countries. And of course, we remain very focused on the hostages held by Hamas, including Americans, in making sure we're doing everything possible to bring them home. One of the common denominators that I've heard throughout this trip is the imperative of American engagement, American leadership. Every country I talk to is looking for us to play a leading role with our diplomacy to try to make progress on all of these different aspects of the crisis. From here, we're heading to Japan for a meeting with the G7. I'll have an opportunity to debrief my colleagues on what we've learned and what we've done during this trip, and to continue that work and carry it forward. And of course, I'll be consulting and debriefing President Biden and discussing with him the way forward in the days ahead. At the same time, we'll be not only in Japan, but also in Korea, and then on to India. I think that's evidence of the fact that even as we are intensely focused on the crisis in Gaza, we're also very much engaged and focused on the important work that we're doing in the Indo-Pacific and in other parts of the world to advance American interests. With that, happy to take a couple of questions.
Jenny?
Hi, thank you, Mr. Secretary. You mentioned people are looking to the United States to make progress on all of these points, but thus far we've seen very little concrete apparent progress on a lot of the issues you raised here. Israel continues to reject the humanitarian pauses. We continue to see these images coming out of Gaza of the civilian toll here. So given all of this, do you feel that you accomplished the mission you set out on this trip?
All of this is a work in progress. Look, we know the deep concern here for the terrible toll that Gaza is taking on Palestinians, on men, women, and children in Gaza, innocent civilians, a concern that we share and that we're working on every single day. We've engaged the Israelis on steps that they can take to minimize civilian casualties. We're working, as I said, very aggressively on getting more humanitarian assistance into Gaza, and we have very concrete ways of doing that, and I think you'll see in the days ahead that assistance can expand in significant ways so that more gets into people who need it and gets to the people who need it, as well as making sure that people can continue to come out of Gaza. I think we've had important conversations, and more than conversations, we're making sure that the different influence and relationships that countries in the region have, including the countries that I visited or spoke to, that they're using that to make sure that this conflict and crisis doesn't spread. And that's critical, and I think countries are very much engaged in trying to make sure that doesn't happen. So that's important, and sometimes the absence of something bad happening may not be the most obvious evidence of progress, but it is. And also tremendously important are the conversations we're having about how we can set the conditions, as I said, for a just and durable and sustainable peace. And I think we had very important engagements with many of the countries in the region on that, so that we're doing that work. Even as we're focused on the day of and getting through this crisis, we're also focused on the day after and making sure that there's a better path forward coming out of it. So I think in each of these areas, we've made we've made progress, and I come back to the proposition that what I heard in every single place, in a variety of ways, on all of these different issues, is the indispensability of American leadership, of American diplomacy, of American engagement. Countries are looking for us to do things, and we don't obviously agree on everything, but there are common views on some of the imperatives of the moment that we're working on together, and in other areas we're making sure that we're communicating clearly and understanding where each other's coming from.
Follow-up, Mr. Secretary, have you seen the Israelis
back here in the studio with Mr. Shafir and Brigadier General of Shafir, rather, and Ambassador Ayalon? I want to start perhaps with the last paragraph of U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken speaking right now at the airport from Turkey on his way to Japan, because he intuitively connected Ukraine, Israel, and the Asian allies of the United States, because at the end of the day, Kyiv, Jerusalem, and Taiwan, all part of the same story. With that said, Ambassador Ayalon, we are often using this term here in Israel when trying to describe military objectives. Have we crossed the Rubicon when it comes to the international timetable?
Well, two things. I think it's more than intuition for the Americans to actually lump together the Gaza war and the Ukraine war, as they see it part and parcel of the whole global campaign, where on the one side you have Iran, the global jihadists, and of course Russia and China in the back with the financial aid, and on the other hand you have the coalition led by the United States. So it's very important for the United States to come out of this war in Gaza with a totally different shaped Middle East. They also take note with the understanding that actually Hamas or Iran, what they fear most is peace in the Middle East.
Yeah.
The normalizations with Saudi Arabia, the Oslo Accord. We remember that the Oslo Accords, in the 90s, 1950s, major part of their breakdown was Hamas initiation of the suicide bombings in Israel. It was Hamas under the guidance, spiritual guidance of Iran. The Iranians do not want to see a Middle East where Israel is part of it, where there is a new architecture of the Sunni Arab countries and Israel together under, let's say, leadership of the United States. So they would do everything to scuttle this. And this is why I believe the Americans are so much with Israel now, with the goal of eliminating Hamas, because so long as Hamas is there, there's no chance for peace, because every time we'll make progress, Hamas will act up again to demolish any process for peace. And this is the thing what's at stake now. This is why we have this leeway from the American and the rest of the international community, but mostly it's important to have the eye on the ball on America. It's less important what they think in Pakistan about what Israel does in Gaza.
Yes, the here, the now will resonate around the world for many years to come.